Requirements.txt versus setup.py. I started working with Python. I've added requirements.txt and setup.py to my project. But, I am still confused about the purpose of both files. I have read that setup.py is designed for redistributable things and that requirements.txt is designed for non-redistributable things. But I am not certain this is accurate. How are those two files truly intended to be used?
Requirements.txt. This helps you to set up your development environment. Programs like pip can be used to install all packages listed in the file in one fell swoop. After that you can start developing your Python script. Especially useful if you plan to have others contribute to the development or use virtual environments. This is how you use it. It can be produced easily by pip itself. Pip automatically tries to only add packages that are not installed by default, so the produced file is pretty minimal. Setup.py. This helps you to create packages that you can redistribute. The setup.py script is meant to install your package on the end user system, not to prepare the development environment as pip install or requirements.txt does. See this answer for more details on setup.py. The dependencies of your project are listed in both files.
The short answer is that requirements.txt is for listing package requirements only. Setup.py on the other hand is more like an installation script. If you don't plan on installing the Python code, typically you would only need requirements.txt. The file setup.py describes, in addition to the package dependencies, the set of files and modules that should be packaged, or compiled, in the case of native modules, i.e., written in C, and metadata to add to the Python package listings, for example package name, package version, package description, author. Because both files list dependencies, this can lead to a bit of duplication. Read below for details. Requirements.txt. This file lists Python package requirements. It is a plain text file, optionally with comments, that lists the package dependencies of your Python project, one per line. It does not describe the way in which your Python package is installed. You would generally consume the requirements file with pip install or requirements.txt. The file name of the text file is arbitrary, but is often requirements.txt by convention. When exploring source code repositories of other Python packages, you might stumble on other names, such as devdependencies.txt or dependencies.dev.txt. Those serve the same purpose as dependencies.txt but generally list additional dependencies of interest to developers of the particular package, namely for testing the source code, for example PyTest, Polint, etc., before release. Users of the package generally wouldn't need the entire set of developer dependencies to run the package. If multiple requirements x.txt variants are present, then usually one will list runtime dependencies, and the other build time or test dependencies. Some projects also cascade their requirements file, i.e. when one requirements file includes another file, example. Doing so can reduce repetition. Setup.py. This is a Python script which uses the setup tools module to define a Python package, name, files included, package metadata, and installation. It will, like requirements.txt, also list runtime dependencies of the package. Setup tools is the de facto way to build and install Python packages, but it has its shortcomings, which over time have sprouted the development of new meta package managers, like pip. Example shortcomings of setup tools are its inability to install multiple versions of the same package, and lack of an uninstall command. When a Python user does pip install /pageeater_my_module, or pip install my module, pip will run setup.py in the given directory, or module. Similarly, any module which has a setup.py can be pip installed, for example by running pip install from the same folder. Do I really need both? Short answer is no, but it's nice to have both. They achieve different purposes, but they can both be used to list your dependencies. There is one trick you may consider to avoid duplicating your list of dependencies between requirements.txt and setup.py. If you have written a fully working setup.py for your package already, and your dependencies are mostly external, you could consider having a simple requirements.txt with only the following. The E is a special pip install option which installs the given package in editable mode. When pip or requirements.txt is run on this file, pip will install your dependencies via the list in /setup.py. The editable option will place a symlink in your installed directory, instead of an egg or archived copy. It allows developers to edit code in place from the repository without reinstalling. You can also take advantage of what's called setup tools extras when you have both files in your package repository. You can define optional packages in setup.py under a custom category, and install those packages from just that category with pip. And then, in the requirements file, this would keep all your dependency lists inside setup.py. Note, you would normally execute pip and setup.py from a sandbox, such as those created with the program virtualenv. This will avoid installing Python packages outside the context of your project's development environment.
For the sake of completeness, here's how I see it in 4 different angles. Their design purposes are different. This is the precise description quoted from the official documentation, emphasis mine. Whereas install_requires, in setup.py, defines the dependencies for a single project, requirements files are often used to define the requirements for a complete Python environment. Whereas install_requires requirements are minimal, requirements files often contain an exhaustive listing of penned versions for the purpose of achieving repeatable installations of a complete environment. But it might still not easy to be understood, so in next section, there come 2 factual examples to demonstrate how the 2 approaches are supposed to be used differently. Their actual usages are therefore supposed to be different. If your project foo is going to be released as a standalone library, meaning others would probably do import foo, then you, and your downstream users, would want to have a flexible declaration of dependency, so that your library would not, and it must not, be picky about what exact version of your dependency should be. So, typically, your setup.py would contain lines like this. If you just want to somehow document or pin your exact current environment for your application bar, meaning, you or your users would like to use your application bar as is, i.e. running python bar.py, you may want to freeze your environment so that it would always behave the same. In such case, your requirements file would look like this. In reality, which one do I use? If you are developing an application bar which will be used by python bar.py, even if that is just script for fun, you are still recommended to use requirements.txt because, who knows, next week, which happens to be Christmas, you would receive a new computer as a gift, so you would need to set up your exact environment there again. If you are developing a library foo which will be used by import foo, you have to prepare a setup.py. Period. But you may still choose to also provide a requirements.txt at the same time, which can A. Either be in the A equals 1.2.3 style, as explained in number 2 above. B. Or just contain a magical single dot. The latter is essentially using the conventional requirements.txt habit to document your installation step as pip install dot, which means to install the requirements based on setup.py while without duplication. Personally, I consider this last approach kind of blurs the line, adds to the confusion, but it is nonetheless a convenient way to explicitly opt out for dependency pinning when running in a C environment. The trick was derived from an approach mentioned by Python packaging maintainer Donald in his blog post. Different lower bounds. Assuming there is an existing engine library with this history. You follow the above 3 criteria and correctly decided that your new library hybrid engine would use a setup.py to declare its dependency engine equals 1.2.0, 2, and then your separated application reliable car would use requirements.txt to declare its dependency engine equals 1.2.3, 2, or you may want to just pin engine equals 1.2.3. As you see, your choice for their lower bound number are still subtly different, and neither of them uses the latest engine equals 2.0.0. And here is why. Hybrid engine depends on engine equals 1.2.0 because the needed add_fuel API was first introduced in engine 1.2.0, and that capability is the necessity of hybrid engine, regardless of whether there might be some minor bugs inside such version and been fixed in subsequent versions 1.2.1, 1.2.2 and 1.2.3. Reliable car depends on engine equals 1.2.3 because that is the earliest version without known issues so far. Sure, there are new capabilities in later versions, i.e. nuclear reactor introduced in engine 2.0.0, but they are not necessarily desirable for project reliable car. Your yet another new project time machine would likely use engine equals 2.0.0, but that is a different topic, though.
TL drive. Requirements.txt lists concrete dependencies, setup.py lists abstract dependencies. A common misunderstanding with respect to dependency management in Python is whether you need to use a requirements.txt or setup.py file in order to handle dependencies. The chances are you may have to use both in order to ensure that dependencies are handled appropriately in your Python project. The requirements.txt file is supposed to list the concrete dependencies. In other words, it should list pinned dependencies using the equals specifier. This file will then be used in order to create a working virtual environment that will have all the dependencies installed with the specified versions. On the other hand, the setup.py file should list the abstract dependencies. This means that it should list the minimal dependencies for running the project. Apart from dependency management though, this file also serves the package distribution, say on py. For a more comprehensive read, you can read the article Requirements, Text versus Setup.py in Python on TDS. Now going forward, and as of PEP 517 and PEP 518, you may have to use a PyProject.toml in order to specify that you want to use setup tools as the build tool and an additional setup.cfg file to specify the details. For more details you can read the article setup.py versus setup.cfg in Python.
If you want to see more, please consider subscribing.